There's a moment every day when your mind whispers a choice. Get up or stay still, push forward or wait for the right feeling, and in that moment, most people wait. They wait for motivation, they wait for clarity. They wait for the mood to strike, but the truth is, the life you want won't wait for your feelings to align. Progress doesn't ask if you're ready, it asks if you're willing. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't intelligence, talent, or luck. It's execution. It's the ability to act, especially when you don't feel like it. The people who build momentum, who create change, who achieve the impossible, they don't wait for energy, they generate it. They show up when it's hard, they move even when they're tired, and they don't always feel motivated. They feel the resistance and move anyway. Action leads motivation. This truth flips the common belief on its head. Most people wait to feel motivated before they start something. They wait for inspiration to strike, for energy to rise, or for clarity to appear. But if you wait for motivation, you might be waiting forever. Because motivation is unpredictable. It comes and goes like weather. Some days you feel ready to conquer everything, and other days, even the smallest task feels like a mountain. That's why you can't depend on it. Instead, you have to learn to move first, do something, anything, and let that action spark the motivation you were hoping for. The mistake many people make is thinking they need to feel good to begin. They believe that unless they're mentally in the zone, it's not worth starting. But the truth is, movement is what gets you into the zone. Think about any time you dreaded starting a workout, a project, or a difficult conversation. It felt heavy beforehand, but the moment you got into it, the resistance started to fade. Your energy lifted, your focus improved, you remembered why it mattered. That shift didn't come from waiting. It came from action. The mind and body are deeply connected. When you sit in stillness, your mind often follows, becoming sluggish and distracted. But when you begin to act, your physiology changes. Your heart rate rises, your brain releases chemicals like dopamine, and momentum starts to build. This physical movement tells your brain, we're doing something now, let's go. And once you start, even in a small way, it's easier to keep going. Action builds confidence too. Every time you follow through, you prove to yourself that you're capable, even when it's uncomfortable. This creates a loop. Action builds progress, progress builds belief, and belief fuels motivation. Suddenly, what felt impossible becomes manageable. What felt overwhelming becomes a series of simple, doable steps. But none of that begins until you do. This is why discipline is more powerful than motivation. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings change. Discipline is a choice. Habit you train. It's the ability to act without needing your emotions to give you permission. And it's that discipline, that commitment to showing up regardless of how you feel, that creates the environment for motivation to appear. Even when you don't know where to start, start somewhere. Break the task into its smallest part and take that first step. If you want to write, begin with one sentence. If you want to get fit, start with 5 minutes of movement. If you want to build a new habit, begin with one tiny action repeated daily. Small beginnings have immense power. They lower the mental barrier to entry and open the door to momentum. The greatest breakthroughs often begin with the smallest decisions. It's not about being perfect or productive every minute. It's about consistently choosing to move forward. Some days, your best might look like massive progress. Other days, it might just be showing up. But as long as you're in motion, you're building something. You're giving motivation a reason to join you instead of waiting for it to lead the way. So don't sit back and wait to feel ready. The truth is, you might never feel fully ready. But readiness isn't a requirement for progress. Action is. Start small, start messy, start now. Let the act of doing be the spark that lights your drive. Because once you begin, motivation tends to catch up. And from there, everything begins to move. You are not your feelings. That's a powerful truth that most people forget in the heat of a bad moment. Feelings are real, but they are not facts. They are signals, not commands. Emotions rise and fall like waves, sometimes soft and quiet, other times overwhelming and fierce. But just because you feel something strongly doesn't mean it defines you. And it certainly doesn't mean you have to obey it. Too often, people let their feelings make decisions for them. They feel tired, so they don't show up. They feel afraid, so they don't take the risk. They feel unworthy, so they don't speak up or step forward. But those feelings are just weather systems in the mind. They pass, they shift, and if you tie your identity to them, you'll live a life of inconsistency and regret. You are not lazy just because you feel lazy. You are not weak just because you feel overwhelmed. What you feel in a moment is just that, a moment. There's a critical difference between acknowledging your emotions and being controlled by them. Emotionally intelligent people don't ignore their feelings. They respect them, listen to them, but don't bow to them. They know emotions are messengers, not masters. Feeling frustrated might mean something needs attention, but it doesn't justify destructive behavior. Feeling anxious might signal that you care, but it doesn't mean you can't move forward. It's in those uncomfortable moments that your choices matter most. You can pause, breathe, and respond with intention instead of reacting with impulse. Your power lies in that space between feeling and action. That small pause is where maturity is born. That's where character is shaped. That's where you prove to yourself that you are the one driving the car, not the emotion in the passenger seat yelling direction. Life becomes clearer when you realize that you don't have to feel confident to act with courage. You don't have to feel motivated to do what needs to be done. You don't have to feel like doing something in order to do it. You can choose to lead yourself. Some of the most impactful progress you'll ever make will happen on the days you didn't feel like doing anything, when you feel heavy and still show up, when you feel anxious but still speak, when you feel insecure but still put yourself out there. That's when inner strength grows. That's when you separate yourself from your past patterns and begin to shape your future deliberately. Because you're not waiting to feel better. You're training yourself to be better. Emotions are part of the human experience. They give life color, depth, and connection, but they were never meant to hold the steering wheel. If you let anger, fear, or doubt drive, you'll crash into the walls of your own potential. If you let joy, hope, and discipline take the lead, you'll begin to build a life rooted in truth, not mood. The key is awareness. Know what you're feeling, but don't let it become who you are. You have to remind yourself, especially on the hard days, this feeling is temporary, but my choices are permanent. The discomfort will pass, the doubt will fade, but the decisions I make today will echo in who I become. When you stop identifying with every feeling that passes through, you gain control. You stop being reactive and start becoming intentional. That's when you truly start to lead yourself with strength. So next time your emotions feel overwhelming, remember this. They are not the enemy, but they are not the truth either. They are part of the story, not the whole book. You are deeper than your sadness, stronger than your fear, and wiser than your anger. You are not your feelings. You are the one who decides what to do with them. Discipline outperforms excuses every single time. Excuses are easy, seductive even. They offer a way out, a reason to delay, a justification to do less. They sound reasonable. They often wear the mask of logic. I'm too tired. I had a long day. I'll do it tomorrow. Or I'm just not in the right mindset. But excuses are not rooted in truth. They are built on comfort and avoidance. They don't solve problems. They help you escape them temporarily. What excuses steal, discipline builds. And that's the difference between staying stuck and moving forward. Discipline isn't about punishment. It's not about perfection. It's the quiet commitment to keep showing up. It's about doing what you said you'd do, long after the mood you said it in has faded. It's the voice that tells you to get up when it's easier to stay down. It's the habit of putting your values before your feelings. And while motivation may spark your engine, It's discipline that keeps the wheels turning. Discipline is what separates the wishers from the doers. Anyone can want change. Anyone can talk about goals, write them down, make vision boards, and read books. But none of that matters if you're not willing to put in the work when it's inconvenient. Real progress demands effort in the ordinary, thankless moment. The early mornings, the late nights, the repetition, the boredom, the discomfort. Discipline thrives where excitement fades, and when it does, growth begins. Excuses, on the other hand, offer temporary comfort, but permanent stagnation. They keep you in the same loop, recycling the same story, living the same day over and over. Each excuse you make is a brick in the wall between where you are and where you want to be. Over time, those bricks pile up. They become your identity. I'm just not a morning person. I've always struggled with this. I'm too busy right now. But discipline tears down that wall, one consistent action at a time. What makes discipline so powerful is that it doesn't care how you feel. You don't have to be in the mood. You don't need perfect conditions. You just need a decision, a choice to take the next right step regardless of circumstances. And that kind of choice builds momentum. It builds resilience. You begin to trust yourself, not because you always get it right, but because you know you'll keep showing up. The truth is, you can't have both progress and excuses. One has to go. If you want to transform anything, your health, your mindset, your career, your relationships, you need to stop waiting for things to get easier and start becoming stronger. Discipline gives you that strength. It gives you freedom, because when you live by discipline, you're no longer at the mercy of your moods. You don't need external conditions to be perfect. You create your own conditions by how you show up. There will always be reasons to quit, to delay, to shrink. But every time you choose discipline over an excuse, you rewrite your identity. You become someone who follows through, someone who leads their life instead of watching it pass by. That's how confidence is built. Not by feeling good all the time, but by knowing you can count on yourself when it matters. So when the voice of excuses rises up, and it will meet it with discipline, when it says, skip today, you say, I do it anyway. When it says, you're too tired, you say, I do it tired. That mindset, repeated daily, transforms not just what you do, but who you become. And who you become is always greater than any excuse you'll leave behind. Big change rarely starts with big moves. It begins with small steps, quiet, consistent actions that often go unnoticed, but create the foundation for something powerful. When people think about transformation, they picture dramatic scenes, quitting a job, moving to a new city, starting a business overnight. But real change doesn't usually look like that. It looks like waking up 10 minutes earlier, saying no when you usually say yes, drinking water instead of soda, putting your phone down to read a page. It's these small, almost invisible choices that compound over time and lead to extraordinary outcomes. The problem is that small steps don't feel exciting, they're not glamorous, they don't give you instant results. So they get overlooked, dismissed as insignificant, but that's a mistake, because every massive tree starts as a seed, every towering building begins with one brick, every strong habit starts with a single decision. And when those small decisions are repeated daily, they become the architecture of your life. Consistency beats intensity. Anyone can sprint hard for a few days. Anyone can crash, diet, overwork, or obsess for a short burst of time. But that kind of intensity fades, life catches up, motivation dips, and when that happens, people fall back into old habits. What lasts are the actions that become a part of who you are. The walk you take each morning, the journal entry before bed, the 10 minutes of deep focus before checking your phone. These aren't revolutionary, but they are transformative, because they are sustainable. There's also a mental shift that happens when you take small steps. You prove to yourself that change is possible, that you are capable, that you don't need to wait for some magical moment to start. You can begin right where you are with what you have. This builds self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. Every time you follow through, even in a small way, you send a message to your brain. I keep my word. I'm becoming who I say I want to be. Small steps also remove the pressure. When the goal feels too big, it becomes paralyzing. The brain sees it as a threat, a massive wall you don't know how to climb. So you procrastinate, you avoid, you tell yourself you'll start later. But when you shrink the task into something manageable, something you can do today, you bypass that resistance. You move, and movement creates momentum. One small step becomes 2, then 5, then 10, and suddenly you're not stuck anymore. You're progressing. It's also important to understand that growth isn't always visible in the beginning. You might be showing up daily and not seeing results right away. That's normal. Roots grow underground before the plant ever breaks the surface. Trust the process. Stay consistent. Keep watering the seed. Eventually, what you've built in silence will speak loudly in the results it produces. There is no shortcut to lasting change, but there is a simple path. Start small and stay steady. Let go of the idea that you need to overhaul your life overnight. Focus instead on what you can do today. One step, one action, one better choice. Over time, those steps add up. They shift your habits, your mindset, your identity. So don't underestimate the power of small. It's not a lack of ambition. It's the smartest way to make your ambition last. Because while big moves impress, small steps transform. They turn intentions into action, and action into a new reality. Keep moving, keep showing up. Even the smallest step forward is still a step in the right direction. Self-trust isn't something you're born with, it's something you earn. And the way you earn it is through follow-through. Every time you make a promise to yourself and keep it, no matter how small, you build a foundation of trust within. On the other hand, every time you say you'll do something and don't, that foundation begins to crack. Over time, those cracks become self-doubt. You stop believing your own words, you start questioning your potential. But it's not because you're incapable. It's because your actions didn't line up with your intentions. Follow-through is the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. It's easy to set goals, make plans, or say what you're going to do. But talk is cheap. The real measure of growth is whether or not you follow through on those words when the feeling has faded, when the day gets hard, when no one's watching. That's where self-respect is built. That's where self-trust is forged. Trusting yourself doesn't mean you think you'll never fail. It means you believe that you'll show up again after failure, that you'll keep your word not just to others, but to yourself. When you follow through, even imperfectly, you prove to yourself that you can rely on you. That changes everything. It affects how you show up at work, how you lead in relationships, how you take risks. Because deep down you know, if I say I'll do it, I will. One of the biggest reasons people feel stuck or lost isn't because they lack motivation or talent. It's because they've broken too many promises to themselves. They've told themselves they'd start the workout, finish the project, wake up earlier, stop the bad habit, but didn't. And over time, that pattern creates a belief, I can't change. But that belief is a lie built on inconsistent action. The truth is, the moment you start doing what you say you will, consistently, repeatedly, you start rebuilding that trust. You don't need massive wins to rebuild self-trust. You just need small wins done consistently. Wake up at the time you promised yourself. Follow through on that one task you've been avoiding. Keep the commitment even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. That's where strength is born. Not in the easy moments, but in the ones that require discipline, focus, and courage. Following through also teaches you self-leadership. You stop waiting for someone else to push you, remind you, or rescue you. You become your own source of accountability. That doesn't mean you never need support, but it means you're not dependent on it. You move whether you feel like it or not, because you've trained yourself to honor your word. That builds a kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to be shouted. It's felt, it's steady, it's unshakable, and when you trust yourself, everything else changes. Your goals feel more within reach, not because they're easier, but because you've become someone who can handle the hard part. You stop doubting your next step because your past actions give you evidence. You stop overthinking and start doing because your behavior aligns with your beliefs. So if you want to build confidence, clarity, and real momentum in your life, start with this. Say less and do more. Make fewer promises and follow through on every single one. Let your consistency speak louder than your intentions. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. Honest enough to start, strong enough to stay with it, and brave enough to try again when you fall. Because self-trust isn't built in a moment. It's built in the daily decision to do what you said you would, no matter what. Choosing ownership over comfort is one of the most defining decisions a person can make. Comfort feels good in the short term. It's safe, predictable, and easy, but it's also deceptive. It promises rest, but often delivers stagnation. It tells you to wait, to soften your standards, to accept less than what you're capable of. Ownership, on the other hand, is harder. It requires responsibility, effort, and honesty, but it's the only path to growth, freedom, and real self-respect. Because when you take ownership, you stop blaming your circumstances and start building your life deliberately. Ownership means recognizing that your results are your responsibility. No matter how unfair, unpredictable, or painful life has been, it's not about guilt or shame. It's about power. It's about standing up and saying, "This is my life. I choose how I respond. I choose how I move forward." That mindset changes everything. It shifts your focus from what's missing to what's possible. It takes you out of victim mode and into leader mode, not just for others, but for yourself. Comfort is where dreams go to die quietly. It convinces you to hit snooze one more time, to delay the decision, to avoid the uncomfortable conversation. It numbs you with distraction, routine, and rationalization. But while comfort may protect you from discomfort, it also keeps you from progress. There's no growth without challenge. There's no breakthrough without resistance. And every time you choose comfort over action, you trade your potential for temporary ease. The truth is, most people don't fail because of lack of talent. They fail because they settle. They stop showing up when it gets hard. They avoid responsibility because it feels heavy. But ownership is the gateway to change. When you stop outsourcing your outcomes to other people, to luck, to timing, you reclaim your power. You no longer need perfect conditions to begin. You don't need permission. You just need the courage to say, "It starts with me." Ownership teaches you to ask better questions. Instead of "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What can I learn from this?" Instead of "Who's to blame?" you ask, "What can I do better?" That shift alone opens up new solutions, new perspectives, and new strength. It doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. You begin to take initiative instead of waiting. You become more proactive, more intentional, more driven. Owning your life means accepting both your power and your limitations. It's not about pretending to control everything. It's about taking full control of what you can. Your mindset, your habits, your effort, your attitude. You can't always control outcomes, but you can always control how you show up. And when you consistently take ownership, you build a life that reflects your values, not your excuses. This mindset is not about being harsh with yourself, it's about being honest. Radical honesty leads to radical change. When you stop lying to yourself about your patterns, your priorities, and your potential, you create space to actually improve. And with that improvement comes confidence, not the loud, surface kind, but the quiet, steady kind that grows from knowing you're doing the work. Choosing ownership over comfort means choosing growth over ease, responsibility over avoidance, and truth over excuses. It means saying no to the easy road so you can walk the right one. It means showing up even when no one's watching, because you're not doing it for approval. You're doing it because it's who you are becoming. It's not the popular path, but it's the powerful one, And in the end, that decision, day after day, is what separates a life of regret from a life of meaning. The decision to choose ownership over comfort is what defines the course of your life. Comfort might offer temporary ease, but ownership delivers long-term strength. When you take full responsibility for your choices, your habits, and your direction, you unlock a level of power that no external circumstance can take from you. You stop waiting and start creating. You stop blaming and start building. Growth begins the moment you stop seeking the easy way out and start honoring the hard truth that everything you want is on the other side of disciplined action and personal accountability. Own your life and watch it transform.